Yeah. That's right. Hi guys, thanks for coming. We're going to talk to you today about Drupal in the Pacific. So it's kind of a story of the last few years, how we've been implementing Drupal around the Pacific. For a specific focus on climate change data, so it's about sharing climate change data and how we built Drupal portals to facilitate that. So my name is Arve. I work at Griffith Uni in Queensland. So I've been on the iCLIM project, which is the project that's been working with the Pacific for about 4 years now. And this is Tavita.
Yeah, so I'm Tavita. I'm the systems developer, and I used to work together with Arve on the iCLIM project, but I've recently moved over now to a new project that's also using Drupal as the main platform. And I'm working with an organization called SPREP, and that's based in Samoa.
Yeah, so we'll be more into details about SPREP after. So we'll start off with a brief overview of SPREP and the iCLIM project. And then we'll move on to, in terms of the status, how it was in terms of how it was shared, the climate change data in the Pacific, how we went about the process of choosing Drupal as a platform, the implementation, a bit more about the Inform project and how that's impacted the whole Drupal situation in the Pacific, and the current status, next steps. So we'll try to be fairly on the point there, but it's not a very technical presentation, but we'll try to cover all the lessons learned we had along the way of implementing Drupal in the Pacific, in the region, and what kind of challenges and barriers we've faced throughout that time.
Yeah, so just a brief introduction and an overview of what SPREP is. SPREP stands for the Secretariat for the Pacific Regional Environment Program, and it's a regional organization that's charged with protecting the environment in the Pacific and the natural resources. It's based in Samoa, and there's 26 member countries. So a lot of those member countries are the Pacific Islands, but also a lot of the closely related countries such as Australia, France, New Zealand, the UK, and the US. SPREP operates in these 4 main priority areas that you see up there. The iCLIM project is actually part of the first one there, the Climate Change Resilience Program. And the program that I'm in now with my new project is under the Environmental Governance. And these are the 4 main areas that SPREP has identified as the key areas that's impacting the Pacific. And yeah, just to give an overview of the systems that were in place 5 years back, kind of grouped them into these 3 groupings that you see up here. We had our internal systems, our private systems, our HR systems. We had a people and organizations database system, and that was running on just a lookup table on on Microsoft Exchange public folders. We had a work plan implementation database, so anytime any of the staff went out to do some activities out in the region or traveling out, such as this one here, coming to Drupal South, you come back and then you have to do a report on it, and that was done in Microsoft Access. Then we had another system on your performance development. At the beginning of the year, you do like a little plan and the goals that you set out. In the middle of the year, you do a bit of a status report, and at the end of the year, you kind of do your report on how it panned out. And that was done in .NET Nuke or DNN. And then we had our public-facing systems, like our main SPREP website, and that was implemented in Joomla. Actually, a lot of the websites around the Pacific at the time were either in Joomla or WordPress. We had a virtual library catalog running Presto, so that was all of our publications and any kind of material that came out of SPREP that would live inside this virtual library catalog system. Then we had the project-specific systems. So back then we had a website that housed some of the climate change data at the time, and that was running Joomla as well. And some of the other projects, like the conservation project, working with the turtles around the region, the different types of species. So they had a little database that came out of that project, and that was running on Microsoft Access. We had in-country sites again with that were all implemented in WordPress, and then we had some protected areas portal that was running Joomla. So as you can see at the time, we had no Drupal at all. And yeah, that's right around the time that the iCLIM project started.
Yes, so the iCLIM project is funded by Department of Trade and Foreign Affairs, and it's there to enable better climate change resilience and adaptation planning in the Pacific. And we're focusing on actually improving the accessibility and storage and how climate data is used and shared across the Pacific region. So we started in 2014 to plan the work, and as Tavita said, SPREP is a regional organization that works with a lot of the countries in the Pacific. There are another regional organization as well that is also the big size called SPC that also works with different member countries in the Pacific. But we work closely to support SPREP to assist this work. So they're in a supportive role and just enabling SPREP to do the work. So our main focus was then to take the Pacific Climate Change Portal, which was currently running on Joomla, and give that, make sure that that is up to the best standard it can be in terms of supporting sharing the public climate change data. And this change came across a lot after the Paris Agreement, where there was new reporting needs that is enforced on the countries, so they need to have public information around how their climate change policies are, how the projects that are being implemented. And this is kind of being implemented all around the world, and we're kind of trying to enable the Pacific countries to take part in that. So we kind of have 4 core principles in the project, and one is discoverability, and is make sure that the data is connected and it can be found basically. And big part of that was to find a right metadata schema or the right metadata attributes to actually describe the data and expose that in a proper way. Reusability as well. We found that we worked with a lot of the different countries, and they all had really various implementations of and storage of their data. Some of them we had to work a lot with the IKM processes, information knowledge management, making sure that the data was found, was made discoverable, made public. There was a lot of data just sitting on old hard drives or computers and never being shared. So, and no one knew that it was there, so no one could find it, and that meant that it's doubling up of work. People can find it, so they create another project, someone else does the same thing, and we can't really reuse the data. And also secure and sustainable storage. So there has been a lot of issues with data getting lost because inefficient or no backups at all, or not the ability to actually restore from, even if they have a backup, they haven't been able to restore from them because it's maybe been from an old system or in incompatible format. And also just enabling all the stakeholders, which would be the countries and the regional organization that we work with, to actually share the data in between them, to create information portals that can connect to each other and share the data. So the main object that I've been in charge of in the iCLIM project is the IKM Systems, and that's to increase the participation for our stakeholders in the Pacific regional climate change system. So that means basically anyone who's sharing data about climate change in the Pacific region is kind of part of that system, and we want to enable the people we work with or the countries we work with to take part in that in the best possible way. So we started off consulting with the regional organization, with SPREP, with SPC, and the different member countries, and we put out call to interest to the countries that were interested. And we started with 3 countries first. We started with Vanuatu, Tonga, and Fiji, and went into each of those countries and took stock takes of what kind of climate change data that was there, if they had a portal already, how was it running, is there a kind of a mismatch in terms of what's actually being published and not. So that was to get a good view of what kind of data is out there, what types of data is it, what types of sites are sharing that data, or is it being shared already? Does these sites have any APIs? Does it use a metadata schema, or what metadata schema does it use? And we use this information we got from these consultations from the countries and with SPREP, then to make a determination of how to best allow the data sharing between sites. So in 2014, when we came in, they gave a clear indication of the key barriers and challenges in the Pacific. And one major barrier is infrastructure and bandwidth. That varies really from island to island, what kind of internet connectivity they have. Some islands now more and more have like an underwater cable coming in and supplying internet. But even that, still we need, even if they get that, we still need to consider where that cable is coming from, to see where we should host the data, or where a portal should be hosted, if it should be hosted in the country, do they have the infrastructure for that, or should it be hosted in the cloud, and where in the cloud. Based on which island you're on, it might be best to host on the East Coast in US, or the West Coast, or in Tokyo or Sydney. All depends on where their main ISPs get their data from. So that's something we had to take into consideration for when we're doing the implementation in each country. And that also meant, since the bandwidth is often unreliable, or internet is often unreliable, we have to provide a solution that works well with low bandwidth, so that it doesn't, so we don't use big images, so we can supply a text-only version if needed, things like that. Working with the governments in the Pacific, we always find the issue of the resources we get assigned to work with, or is they're overutilized. They have a lot of duties, and it's hard for them to get the additional time to actually manage a new web portal. So we have to be very mindful of how we introduce this and how we go about actually creating a change in their IKM policies and workflows to make sure that it is prioritized in their budgets and in their staff positions, to make sure that they have someone actually looking after it. And also we saw that the strong need for training in the usage of a web portal, whatever solution we would choose, because there was such a varied amount of different types of solution or platforms being used, like I said, Joomla, custom solution, WordPress, some old Drupal, even 5 and 6 sites that we found out there. So, but there was no one in the current ICT departments who actually had the proper skills to do the hosting and maintenance of a portal like that.
Yeah, so at the time in 2014, there was no common platform for sharing climate change information. The climate change officers would go out, do their work, collect their data, whether it be the samples of how much rainfall is collected from their outposted staff, and then they'd write that down on a piece of paper and maybe put it in Excel, and then they'll have one person that everyone knows that person, that person collects all the data on the water. But once that person moves, or once that person is on leave, no one knows where that is, and basically all the data for that day is kind of lost. And this is kind of like the need that arose that led to the implementation of this iCLIM project. As I said at the time, there's a lot of different technical solutions. Some people were actually had a mandate from their government that said, oh, hey, you have to put it into this format. Everyone has to update this Excel spreadsheet. And depending on where in the Pacific you went, it was more successful in others, in other places, like Samoa, for example. But some of the Pacific islands that are really low-lying, like Kiribati, they'd have a storm, and then the waves just come in, and they just come into the meteorological office, and that basically all of their computers and stuff and any backups they had, it's basically all gone for the past year or so. So they had these unique problems that they were facing, and there was a real need to have their data sitting somewhere secure that they could share with the other Pacific Island countries as well, because all the Pacific Island countries, they have this close-knit network of they share data with each other, and that helps them to improve their overall meteorological functions, like the forecasting, as well as sharing the lessons learned from their own countries. And there were a variety of metadata, just because all of this different data is sitting in these different formats. Some of them are not even using computer systems at all. Some of them are just noting it down in like a notebook and they keep it in their bag, and then there's no way that the data is secure or up to date or can be updated. And yeah, so that last one, no real center of expertise for implementing online solutions. So as Arve mentioned, we went around into these countries and we did like a stock take and identified Drupal at the time as a potential solution for sharing climate change information. And then we had a consultation where we had a meeting, the SPREP IT team, which I was part of at the time, and the iCLIM project team, and we decided to use Drupal for all the new developments. And because Drupal 7 was already established at the time, there was a lot of modules that were already readily available. We decided to go with that and to maximize the resources and the training for the countries, because we were already traveling to these countries on different missions, whether it be for consultation purposes or to do a regional meeting or a training. And we worked together with the team at iCLIM that when we went out, we got together all these different personnel from the different climate change, meteorological services, and any other government sections that were holding climate change data, and we basically had a training for these different groups of people, and which led to the creation of this common set of metadata that we were going to use across all of the countries in the iCLIM project at least.
So part of the reason why Drupal was chosen was, in fact, that there was vendors in working with SPREP IT on other software system or implementation at the moment. So that was third-party vendors. I think it was 80 Options from Tasmania who was working fairly closely with SPREP IT already and giving them some training in Drupal. So, and seeing also a pattern across the other regional organizations that they started using Drupal, even though it wasn't being implemented yet, they started using it. So that's when we kind of evaluated the different, what kind of solution can we kind of scale up and, implement across the range so that we can offer one solution where we can have more technical expertise, and found that we need to, if SPREP IT, as the ones we're working with, if they are focused on using Drupal, they're also able to give better support instead of knowing a little bit of a lot of different systems. They will be able to provide better support and also better their skills as well, because they're going to be focused in their development. So, and the metadata standards that were developed, so that was a team based both on SPREP IT and data librarians from Griffith University who worked over a period of almost a year to use existing metadata schemas and come up with a combined set of taxonomies of vocabularies that could be used for best to describe, for example, documents, policies, projects, news events, all these things. And we then have that as a recommendation that we go out to all the member countries with SPREP to set this is the recommended data you need to describe climate change data with. So that meant that since we have an agreement, okay, we're going to use Drupal, we're going to create this metadata schema, we can now get to work. And like I say, part of the first parts of the work was to create this metadata schema. And we also decided, since the current Pacific Climate Change portal was a mix of systems, it was running Joomla, but it was connecting to a Drupal 6 projects database, and I think a Presto and a .NET Nuke, and it was all kind of merged together. So we rebuilt that from the ground up. And in addition, we decided we're going to create like a federated regional search interface. So we're going to link up external sites and sites that we also collaborate with, and provide one search interface to search all of that data. And this is for the specific niche of like climate change data relating to the Pacific region.
Yeah, so choosing Drupal in 2015, we weighed the pros and cons, and this is basically our consultation results in a nutshell. It was easy and affordable to host. One of the big things at the time was had a really active community base, and it was open source, and there was already a lot of training resources available. So that was easy for us at SPREP, the team at the IT, team at SPREP to get into. And because we were already working with a third-party vendor that was already doing some consultation work for us in revamping some of our internal systems, they came, and every time they came to SPREP in Samoa, they had a visit, they'd run a training, and we see the benefits of using it. And it was quite easy to customize. I think at the time we were all just on this Joomla and WordPress train, but anything that needed just a bit more customization, anything that needed specific use case, it was just that much more harder to implement. And when these guys came in and they said, oh, actually, you can do that in Drupal quite easily. You can just write a little custom module here. And we were sold at the time. And we realized that when we were getting into it, it got updated quite frequently, like every other week. And we're like, oh, okay, so at least we know there's like a lot of people that's already using it. It's quite an active community, and anytime that there's major securities, bugs, it gets rolled out fairly quickly. But there were some drawbacks that we noted, and not really a drawback, but something that we thought would come up fairly quickly was that Drupal 8 was already available at the time, and it didn't really have all of the modules that the Drupal 7 had, and some of the functionality like features. So we were quite conscious of this, and we knew that it wasn't as easy to get into as a WordPress site, for example. Like, we'd go into countries, we'd introduce it, and then they're like, oh, hey, so how do you add a basic page? And like, oh, yeah, so that's a content. And so all this terminology is slightly different between the two. And it just had this learning curve that was quite, it was quite steep, I guess, for participants in our meetings and in all of our training workshops that we noted. But I think that the pros outweighed the cons at the time, and that's why we chose to go with Drupal. So the Pacific Climate Change Portal, which is the main outcome of the iCLIM project, is a regional portal that sits with us at SPREP and provides a secure regional hub for all the things climate change, all the climate change data, and it's updated by us at SPREP. We had an information knowledge management officer that put out regular updates onto the PCCP, and it was redeveloped from scratch from the initial Joomla / Presto mix that we had before. And it's gone through several iterations since it was launched. I think this one here is a new skin, the refresh skin, but because we went out into the countries and they're like, oh, hey, it'd be cool to have this in it, and then we note that down. And so that's the Pacific Climate Change Portal there. When we went into countries, they saw that there was a lot of benefit of having all this climate change information in one place, but they felt that their climate change data was kind of not represented in the way that they wanted. They wanted more control on how that is being published. So that led to the creation of the National Climate Change Portal Starter Pack. And the Starter Pack was basically a Drupal instance that was pre-configured, had some modules already installed, and it had a active public API endpoints and some pre-populated taxonomies based on the consultations that Arve talked about earlier, about these agreed upon terms and taxonomies across the region that we were going to collect data on. And it had a customizable theme at the time, so each country could change the colors and change the logos. And this is what we rolled out to the different iCLIM countries at the time. So there were 3. And it was developed as part of the redevelopment of the PCCP, if you will.
So we saw that there, when we did the PCCP, we saw that a lot of the work we put into developing that portal could be reused on a national level as well, even though we were working with regional concepts. Most of the things were the same, like documents, project news, events. Those needs would be the same for a national portal. There was some section that we could cut out, so it's basically a cut down version of the regional portal. But we then did this to provide country with a kind of like out of the box solution that they could take and get up and running really quickly instead of spending like, say, 4 to 6 weeks in development to get something up and running, and then they can start customizing it. The main, like, with the time saving and also having all the metadata, taxonomies and vocabularies all installed and ready to use, and have an API for sharing the data, that's what been the big win with having this, as it make it so easy for countries to get a portal up and running, and we can kind of, we can instantiate a portal for a new country in 10 minutes, and they can start working on it with a default skin, but they can still start populating it, and basically all they have to do is customize their theme, change their logo, and if they want substantial changes to the appearance of it, they can get graphic designer to help with that, doing that. But a lot of the countries want just minimal changes because they have the same requirements, and we can reuse this code and the functionality we created. So that's just an example. This is how kind of the default skin is slightly, this is example for Tuvalu, so it's just slightly modified, but this is it creates the Drupal sites, and they're able to upload documents, news and events, have job postings, upload project information, and most of the biggest or most used part of it is, of course, the search interface, where people can search search the content and have faceted search filters on the side. So with in addition to the starter pack, we also had, as I mentioned, we created this regional search index. So this aggregates data from external sites and from all the national portals. So it's kind of like a mini Google with just containing specific climate change data for the Pacific region. And how it works is we have a Drupal 8 instance in the middle, which is the data store, and then we have harvesting scripts that actually goes out to various sites. So all the national portals, they get indexed automatically. External sites that provides have an API to provide when they have some public information that's tagged with climate change. So we set up queries there to index the data. Data goes into Drupal 8. It can be admin there, like a normal Drupal 8 instance. So the administrators can go in and remove links if they don't want it to appear in the search interface. But then what we've done to improve, like the first iteration of it was really successful, but it was kind of slow. We used a PHP version and with Solr in the back end, and the searching was really good with Solr, but the way it was set up, it was hitting the PHP instance every time you did filtering or faceting. So and it's being hosted in Samoa still. So if there was a big load on the system, the search and filtering will be a bit slow. So what we changed now is that we use Algolia as a search index provider. So anything that comes up and gets approved into the index get automatically pushed up to Algolia, and then we can have the search interface in the front, just querying Algolia via JavaScript. And that also means that we were suddenly now able to put that search interface, if we want to, we can put that on a national portal or any other site, because it's basically just some HTML and JavaScript components that query it. So then you can query just a subset of it on different sites. So like I say here, you have the harvester worker that gets all the data into Drupal 8, and then you have the indexing, push it to Algolia search index, and that's what's powering the public search interface that the users hit. So what we saw after we implemented the search index and we got all these extra documents into the PCCP, it increased the organic search or organic traffic to the PCCP because we have more relevant content. And some of the sites that we were indexing, they saw up to like 18% increase in overall traffic into their site just because of the additional discoverability that the search index had, and up to as much as thousands of % increase on specific items just because it was featured. Sometimes because we can feature things on the front page of the PCP, the new items being indexed, and if they go on the front page there, they can get easily access. So things that were not normally being accessed because maybe their own portal didn't have the best SEO, optimizations, things like that, now got a lot more traffic just because their content was made available in a different place. We also built a couple of tools, decision support tools. So this is the Climate Finance Navigator. So it's basically a small tool to go and filter and see the available climate finance options per country and per fund. So it's mostly aimed at government officials working with project and climate financing. So this is fairly standard side, developed in Drupal 8. We have another tool called the Adaptation Project Tool. So it's similar to the CFM, but it focuses on adaptation project planning, and that's based on Drupal 8, but it also has a Vue.js single page application on it that pushes someone through the application, fills out and downloads some documents, Excel sheets and Word documents based on their input. So that's kind of like we could use Drupal 8 in kind of a headless mode, just using the admin interface to populate, and the Vue.js application does the rest. So it was very lightweight and quick to use for the users.
Yeah, so the iCLIM project is already set up at this time in 2016, and at the time we saw that there was a need to have all of the information on environment data, not only climate change, and so that led to the inception of this project, building national and regional capacity to implement MEAs, or multilateral environmental agreements, by strengthening planning and state of environmental assessment and reporting in the Pacific. But the short name of this project is the INFORM project, and this project basically sets out to help countries collect all of their environmental data so that they can create their state of environment report, and so that they can meet their own reporting requirements to the different required reports that come out of the country. So the state of environment report, and they have these SDGs that they have signed and they're a part of. So this project came about to help countries facilitate that process of getting all their environmental data, including climate change, into a place where they could turn that information into something useful, and that could help them with their decisions at a high level. So the project funding, it's a GEF grant of around $4 million US, and it includes all of the independent Pacific Island countries that are listed there. And it started early this year and runs until 2021. Yeah. So at the outset of the project, we sought the consultation services of a company here in Australia, in Hobart, the 80 Options team, and they carried out the initial requirements compilation and analysis. So they went out and talked to all the stakeholders on our behalf, and they identified a widely adopted software platform for sharing open data called DCAN. So DCAN is the Drupal version of this CCAN, which is the open data publishing, sharing, and visualization tool that's being used widely around the world. Australia has some, the ADB and also the World Bank. The US has some. And they implemented the regional environment data portal. So that's similar to the Pacific Climate Change portal that houses all of the climate change information at a regional level at SPREP. And they've built an environment data portal that's also sitting with SPREP that not only houses all of the climate change data, but all of the data on biodiversity, land use, any heritage data, all of that data that contributes, that comes out of countries doing their environmental processes. And they also implemented 14 national data portals for each of the countries inside of the project. And basically, the project has 4 products now. And these products are all to help countries with their reporting requirements and their reporting obligations. So we have the data portals and a reporting tool that was also developed as part of the consultation. They found that there was a need for these indicators that comes out of the environment data collection, and also the processes of analyzing that data and sharing that data, making that data available. Yeah, so I guess I just wanted to do a quick demo of what that looked like. Yeah, so this is the regional data portal that's sitting with us at SPREP. And if we go here to the data sets, we can see that we have around 644 data sets that have been harvested or pulled from all the different national portals or the 14 country portals from around the Pacific. And I guess one of the main reasons why DCAN was chosen was because it was out of the box, easily, it had an API that you could easily share all of the data sets. Even if some of the data sets had licenses that were restrictive, you can at least get the metadata on it, and you could get like a contact of who to get more information on a certain project. And
so that the regional portal actually uses the same kind of principle as the Federated regional search that was for climate change data. Well, this is a broader subset of data, which is environmental data. So that uses the same principle, actually harvesting from all their different national nodes and aggregate it all up in the regional node here.
yeah, and this is an example of a recently updated national data portal. So this is the data portal for Papua New Guinea. You can see here that we had some help from the 80 options team again to kind of customize the look and feel of the portal. And one of the main reasons why we went with DCAN was because it was easy to not only upload data sets, but to create visualizations of raw data that's been uploaded as well. So last week we were in PNG and we ran some exercises on how to get that data up into the portal and how to visualize that data. So this is just a simple example of what we did with raw data. They had collected some data on the crocodile eggs harvest between 2002 to 2014, but it was just sitting in a report and they didn't have the raw data set, so we ran training on how to extract that, upload as a data set, and how to visualize it here. The project addresses 3 common problems and vulnerabilities in the Pacific, and that's the use of historical and current evidence of the status and trends of various environmental resources. So basically, we want to see the change over time. So sometimes you want to measure like coastal inundation and those types of environmental data that you can see quite clearly that over time that's definitely decreased or increased, or the sea level rise, and all of these that contribute to creating a national report that at a high level ministers can actually make some informed decisions on. And it addressed the challenges with information management as well, as discussed in length with the iCLIM project as well. And all of this contributes towards informed decision making, which is basically what we want countries to have at the end of the day. When the project ends, they'll have this tool that they can use to collect their data, have it shared, and they can make some informed decisions. So Drupal in the Pacific today, we have a couple regional portals. We have the Pacific Climate Change portal, the Informed Regional Data portal that I just showed, and we also have several other portals that came out of other projects that are housed as SPREP. So we had a Pacific Island Protected Areas portal. So several areas in the Pacific you can't, for example, go and fish for sharks and turtles, and so we have that visualized in another Drupal 8 site. And our sister organization that's based out of Noumea, so that's in New Caledonia, they're also creating a Pacific Data Hub, and they want any data, any data that's generated in the Pacific, not only data on climate change or data on the environment in general.
Yeah, so they're actually using CCAN as the back end for that data storage, but a Drupal front-end administrative interface to power that.
Yeah, then we have the National Climate Change portals. So those ones are using the starter pack, as Arve was talking about, and then we had the National Environment Data portals. That we showcased, like the PNG one that was shown there with the graphs. The Federated Regional Search, and some of the decision support tools that came out of the iCLIM project.
This is kind of just to show, like when we started back in 2015, we basically had the PCCP as we rebuilt that. And then if you go into 2016, started adding the first national portal. Then actually going to 2017, we have two more, like we got Fiji and Tonga as well. And then this year, it's been the kind of the final parts of the project where really we can scale out and push these portals live. So you see here all the different national climate change portals and all the environment data portals running on DCAN, the regional portals and decision support tools. And this is just the ones that we've been involved with iCLIM and SPREP and Inform, while there are others with SPC, which had like the SPREP sister organization. They also adopted Drupal as their main go-to platform for any online service. So you could probably double the ticks on the mark here with what's being implemented. Then the next year or so, we probably within Inform and iCLIM, we're probably looking at adding 5 to 10 more. So it's been a big change the last 3 years and big spread out.
Yeah, so the state of our systems at SPREP in 2018, at the time, most of them were running DNN or Presto. All our internal systems, save for maybe one or two, are all on Drupal 8 now. Our public-facing systems, like our main website, that's running on Drupal 8, and like we've been talking about throughout the presentation, we've been using Drupal 7, DCAN, and Drupal 8 for a lot of the project-specific systems. Yeah, like I mentioned before, other activities in the regions, we're not the only organization in the region that's using Drupal. Our sister organization, SPC, they're building a Pacific Data Hub to kind of deal with all of these issues that are listed here. Yeah. So just a couple lessons learned. If possible, provide a done-for-you approach. Like, it's really hard to sell someone on something if they can't see it. So basically what we do is we kind of put together all of this information that we identified throughout the region, and we kind of populate it with some of their own data sets, some of their own national data, and then we sell it to them, and they can see, oh, hey, that's pretty cool. You know, we can actually use something like that.
Yeah, we had to lower the barrier as much as we could so they could see it instead of even giving them a zip file and a database dump. It's not enough because it was too many steps for them to actually get the server provision and everything like that to run up Drupal. So when we went back one step and actually, okay, we'll put it on our server and install it there for them, and like I say, populate with a couple of things, change the logo for them, and just have them, you know, here's the URL, here's the login details, and they can go in. So lowering the barrier for use greatly, you know, helped people get on board and help get adoption, and in addition have documentation that people can reference, so it doesn't get too many support emails and calls. And I guess the other lesson learned was we have considered, like when we started doing the national portals and PCCP, we were on Drupal 8 was just new, and we went with Drupal 7 because we just had more things out of the box at the time. We didn't have to do so much custom development. We probably wish we had waited a little bit, did that extra development at that time, so we didn't have to develop on the kind of outgoing platform and chosen the new one. And provide ongoing support, especially in the region here. We need to be there and create this center of support and make sure that there's always someone they can reach out to when they encounter issues. Optimize your solution. I'll be quick since we're running out of time, but basically just things like running when you have uploading images, running it through a service like Cloudinary, things like that just optimize the size and enables the delivery and make sure you don't have big images downloading on the front page of the site, providing text-only versions of pages so that if the internet is bad, that you can just download that, and scaling, automate where possible, basically having things as easy as possible. And right now, if we want to roll out a new platform, it's basically a 5-10 minute job because everything is automated into a script. And creating a community. So we're trying to create with all these countries that's now having Drupal installs, and whether or not they're managing it, technically they're using it daily. We're creating kind of, there's so many users now involved with it in the Pacific. So we're trying to create like a Pacific community for these people who's using Drupal platforms, and that's one of the goals for next year as well, to step up that. And even if we maybe have like an online conference, we're going to start a newsletter in terms of having Drupal specific news that could be relevant to the portals, the types of portals they're using. So starting with a newsletter and then going through potentially a virtual conference, or maybe also a in-person conference later down the track. But since we have so many Drupal-based installation projects now, there's a lot more expertise in the region, and we've been so we're trying to harness that and get everyone together, so they have a big contact network. And the big win for us now is that both between SPC as organization, SPREP as organization, and the countries, we can work across those borders now, as they all have a common thing they're working on with the Drupal portals.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, the next steps is we're going to be continuously working with countries and our sister organizations to ensure the sustainability of these portals that we've set up. Things can go defunct quite quickly, so we are just always going into the different countries and just seeing the state of the personnel skill on Drupal. Most of them can upload a data set or create a new content type, but anything a bit more than that, maybe they need a bit of training. We're always providing that training usually on demand. Actually, they always say, oh, hey, we know you're coming in country next week. Can you spend like a couple hours just doing a quick refresher? And that's what we've been doing. That's been doing actually last week, and going forward next year, that's what we're going to be doing for the duration of the project, really. And just continue building the regional community. I think Arve just touched on that a bit. And just an outreach into the region to create more awareness for open source solutions. Yeah. Yeah,
That's it.
that's it for us.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions?
Do you ever face any pushback against trying to like enforce like a regional standard?
Yeah, well, it is looked in the countries more specific to what expertise they already have. Like for example, if their IT support staff only know WordPress or Joomla, there's not been so much pushback against the standards that we had. They're all happy to take that, but many times, like even if we gave them the metadata standard, they didn't have the skills to actually implement in the platform they were using. So it's more about using, we often got the question, oh, can we get the starter pack in Joomla instead, or WordPress instead, can we use that instead? So, but when we're providing training and documentation with it, that's been like the way we kind of overcome that, to just give them the skills to use it, and that's empowering them to, you know, learn a new technology and then use that.
Yeah, and also to add on to that, like the standard that we've created, it's not like something that we came up with magically. It's like it has all the input on it. We'll have a consultation that we'll like present back to them at the end of our consultation. Hey, this is what we thought that you guys think should be part of this standard. Do you guys think it's right? Should we change it? And then all of that collective input creates the standard. So usually, like Arve said, it's not really the standard that's like the issue.
And it has to kind of have the backbone in policy as well. So often we have to work as a separate part of the project. We work with improving the IKM workflow and the policies in the countries. So like when it's signed off as a policy that this is what they should use, then it kind of trickles down. Like that's often how. So there's a part we couldn't touch on here because it is a whole different discussion. But that's how often we have to, or how things get implemented, because it needs to come from the top down.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks guys, thanks for listening.
I live in Poland. I know area of
Oh, you did? Yeah.
Yes, I have a couple comments to say, but now I have to run to
Okay,
the
yeah.
board.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
That was very interesting. Unfortunately, I missed the very beginning of it.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
work on